So just to let you all know, I do have a severe vision impairment. I can't see much. I'm not known to recognize friends such as Lisa until she opens her mouth. And then that's Lisa. Sorry, Lisa.
That's okay. I've got somebody trying to FaceTime me at the moment, so just a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something to
So
do with the English accent, I think.
it could be, could be. So is there anyone else here that has like a hearing issue, a sight issue, because you'll be surprised how many people have these. I don't call them issues, I call them differences because everyone's different.
Andrew here. Yes, I'm legally blind. I've got
Yeah.
a macular degeneration. So that's for those of you not in the know, that's the dying off of the rods and cones in the retina in the central vision region. So I have to bring things close enough and large enough to be able to see around my central blind spot.
Yeah. Well, see, you've got a good one. I've got a really boring one actually, because mine's what they call myopic degeneration. So I was born really short-sighted, and basically my retina is collapsing like a piece of puff pastry, and the optic nerve's playing up a bit, and so yeah, it's just one of those things. And it's all good because you have a good time, don't you, Andrew?
Yeah, yeah. Good.
I do.
There are small benefits like the government looks after us transport wise.
They do. Hey, and I've got a guide dog, so what can I say? And we meet some wonderful people. So look, I might get into it. So yeah, because I'm not sure what time it is. 10
It
past there.
is 10 past 7, so
Yeah. So I don't want to keep people too long, because what I want to talk about tonight is digital accessibility, usability, and the standards. And the reason I just thought I'd do an overview tonight is it does affect everyone. And it is it's something that just by incorporating into your work become and making it second nature means everyone gets the benefits and not just those of us with vision impairment or cognitive brain injuries, neurodiverse, hearing issues. You'll notice, I don't know whether you can see it for those that don't think, I always have my captions on, always, because you never know who cannot hear correctly or who may just.
And you're frozen again, Narelle.
Oh, I'm frozen. The wind is picking up here.
yes.
Yeah. Is that better?
Yes, you've just unfrozen.
Yeah. So you never know what communication barriers people have, and they're not likely to tell you. Someone that is deaf in one ear adjusts. Someone like Andrew with his sight, you make adjustments. And because people don't tell you, no, I just got told my internet connection's unstable. Yes. Um, it's just an important area that we can all just by changing things. So what I'm going to do is share my screen. And if this does go crazy and it keeps freezing, we will reschedule because it's not fair on you guys. Okay. All right. Just got to find the screen. That's what I want. Okay. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what it is, it's a few screens, and I'll just talk you through it. Now, I've also added into the chat what we call the WCAG mind map. And it's just a bit of a
You
diagram.
froze again, Narelle.
Yeah, I was going to say it's frozen again.
Oh, no. Okay. Has it unfrozen again?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. If this keeps up, we'll redo this another day. But you'll find in the chat a WCAG mind map so that you can all, so just as a takeaway for you all. And what we're going to cover first is why make websites, and this is not just websites, it's emails, it's PDF, it's Word documents, it's every piece of digital content that you can think of, Facebook, everything. Why make it accessible? And, you know, you'll hear the figures. Some of us know them very well. There are 4 million people in Australia right now with some form of disability that they are aware of. Okay. There's 1 million people. English is a second language, and that's a huge barrier. I've got my mother-in-law is French, my father-in-law is Italian, and they're at the age now, they're in their late 90s. You can see them translating. It does make a difference. And we all know people that have come from other countries. Again, it's a translation issue, and you can see them translating. So we're talking about the population of Queensland that this can aid. That's a huge market that people are not really marketing to correctly and not catering to correctly. And again, it's under 20% of the population, just under. It's a huge area. And this is where the figures get really interesting. There are 13 million people. This is the 2018 Australian Institute of Health and Welfare stats. 13 million people with some form of vision impairment. That can be long-sighted, short-sighted, dyslexic, colour contrast, colour blindness, visual processing problems of numerous types. There's one called dyspraxia, which is all about recognition of numbers. There you go. There's 549,000 with colour blindness. 411,000 with cataracts. The cataracts is a solvable problem, but you have to get to that stage. My mother's got cataracts, and we're just waiting for her to get to the stage where the operation is going to be feasible. And 244,000 with macular degeneration. Andrew, you're one of a lot of people. And 131,000 with complete blindness. So that's a huge number. That's half our population. There are 3.5 million people with a hearing impairment. Now, we've only covered 2 different types of sensory problems, 1 in 20 with ADHD. So these tools that we're going to talk about tonight enhance everyone's access to information. And the other thing it doesn't include, and Caitlin, you know, for those that are a lot younger, may not be aware of this, my mother only went to grade 7 in education. She's 83 now, and it's quite normal back then that the kids finished school at grade 7. A lot of kids did, and they just went to work. So I'm nearly 60, my class, a lot of them finished in grade 10. And there were, those that are my age will know all about the naughty kids. Well, the ones that were thought to be naughty kids, I found out only a few years ago, they're dyslexic. They've never been able to read and write. They've had successful careers, but they've done it differently. Everyone's out there. I've got a son that's Asperger's, and he will not, if, you know, on your forms you say, are you disabled? He never says yes. He goes, no. It is our problem. It's our fault because we taught him he was normal, that everyone's different. So you don't know how many people actually have issues. And the other thing, it doesn't include situational or just temporary disability. And temporary disability is hearing infections, broken glasses, broken arms, anything where a person for a short period of time cannot carry out their normal way or mode of doing things. There's also situational disability. And, you know, by the way, just ask questions if you want at any time, go for it. Situational disability is everyone's been in bars where you're trying to order a drink and it's too noisy. Or the menu, the font's not right, so it's really hard to read the menu, or the color contrast is not there. Or you can be on a train trying to do something. It's situational disability. It's for a short period of time and then it's resolved. But sometimes you have to do things regardless of the environment you're in. That's another area that the digital accessibility standards actually help. And mine were the broken glasses for years. I went through glasses like someone else goes through a bar of slope. My mother used to hate me some days. Okay. And another reason, digital accessibility standards, the incorporation gives you an improved market share by its nature because it looks at text. So if you're doing SEO, which is search engine optimization, automatically improves with the implementation of the digital accessibility standards. And one of the big ones that people never think about, the cost of not implementing. And we're talking about lost sales because people can't find the cart, people can't use the cart for whatever reason. There's so many reasons why people say it's just too hard. And I've been known to do that myself with different things because I pay the bills in my house and I tend to do everything online. If I can't do it, I move on. And word of mouth is a good one. I've just found a cafe down in Mount Gravatt area called the Little Black Pug Cafe. Most of their menu is accessible, which means anyone that has a vision impairment can go. They are independent. They can order for themselves. There's a group that I'm in, and every Christmas, for our Christmas thing, we go to this one bar because of the service, because of the accessibility implementations that they've put in. We're all independent. We all have a great time, and we don't need our support workers. It's a great reason. And the practicality of use of websites, another one. You only need one website. You should not have a website for mobile phones and a website for tablets and a website for older technologies. One website, and that's the aim of the digital accessibility standards, making it easier to maintain it, easier to update it. It just is a very practical, concise, effective, and efficient way of doing your websites. And of course, inclusivity and diversity. I mean, that's a given, isn't it? And
would that just quickly there, would that be around actually just designing one website or having the same view if you were to look on your iPhone or your iPad or your computer?
That's it. You should have exactly the same view, regardless of the tool you're using. Obviously, I'm using a screen reader, so I get a slightly different view, but I have just enough sight that I can put my head, against the screen and I can work it out.
Yeah.
But it should be the same view, and you should be getting the same information. So people with visual ability should see the same thing regardless of the tools.
Yeah.
People, most websites are designed, and look, I don't know the statistics. Gee, I'd love to know of that. The number of people that have perfect sight, perfect hearing, perfect mobility. You think about people that are getting arthritis and their finger movements are much harder, or, a person with perfect health, perfect mobility, perfect sight, there wouldn't be a big percentage of them, but that's what websites and all digital content is predominantly designed for. And it gets really interesting when you look at the differences in people. And being part of a global movement. So what we're going to be talking about when we get further into the accessibility standards, it is a global movement. It's not just Australia. Being compatible with other technology, with older technologies. One of the tests that I do when I do an audit, I go to a black spot and with my phone, and I see if we can download the web site from there. If I can't download the website on an older phone in a black spot, and it's an iPhone 11, so it's not very old, then there is an issue there because a lot of people don't necessarily have the latest smartphones or tablets, or that they stick with what they know. Be the example, and being the example is providing a lead. It is such a big thing to provide the lead because, like everything else, if one person in the market does it and they get the business, the competitors by their nature tend to follow because they want to stay in business. And it's with anything that you would do, whether it's a cafe, whether it's an IGA, doesn't matter what it is. It's all about remaining in business and getting the clients, isn't it? And getting your services used. Good social ethics and responsibility. I was at a cafe yesterday and it was the most frustrating thing. I couldn't read the menu. It was the menu, even the font, the people that had
getting around.
Oh, has it come back? Is it back?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. So when you're at a cafe and you like, and everyone like they might use gold lettering on a white background. The contrast is not enough for everyone to read it. And it happens, or they use a font that is like italicized fonts are much harder to read. And again, it's all about in getting the right part of your brain to work easily to get the information. You don't want it, when you read something, you don't want to have to sit there and try and figure out the letter because it distracts you from the message. It's a corporate responsibility. Here in Australia, a lot of companies, you will see them say, we follow the guidelines, and I'll explain why. They're not necessarily doing it. They try, but there's steps they're missing. So when you think about it, and you all will have it, how many of you have gone onto a website and can't find the information you need? Our co-founder is a guy called Alan Parker. I think you've met him, Tim. And he will sit there and say, if he can't find the information he wants within 40 seconds, he's gone from that website. It could be entering a date and you're not entering the date correctly because it doesn't tell you the type of date format that's required if you're on a US site versus an Australian site. Could be too complex. It could be lots of flashing lights, which can cause epilepsy, or too much movement that can cause epilepsy, or too much sound coming at you, videos and ads that start straight away. And we've all seen websites where you go onto a website and you're hit with sound. There's so many reasons why websites cause issues. Facebook, if you go on Facebook and you're going through and the videos start automatically, that's really bad because it takes away choice and people don't want to get the message, they move on. And abbreviations. I was looking at one the other day and they're talking BAS and GST and I'm thinking, how does someone that's newer to Australia, they might not understand what BAS is or GST. Someone that's not into marketing might not understand SEO. Someone that's not in Lisa's field, if they start talking AT or O&M or mini guides, there's so many words that people don't know. It's the language that you use on a website will also dictate whether people use your services.
Very true.
Yes.
I just said that's very true, especially somebody who came over to the country less than 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I didn't know half of the acronyms. It was like, stop, what are you talking about?
And I will tell you, we still tease Lisa a lot in different things, but it's good fun. Yeah, we like to throw the Australiana at her. And there's another issue because, if you're doing a website, don't use Australiana terms unless you understand them and you can tell people what they are.
Yeah, and it's one of the I'm working with Hearing Australia at the moment, which has been quite an interesting experience because as a consultant, I get to work with a lot of different businesses, a lot of government businesses that are much more boring than Hearing Australia. But it's been sort of interesting to understand how they and I mean the website part is probably different, but as we think about how we make sure we're capturing the needs of people with hearing, quite substantial hearing impairments often, and really sort of focusing on their needs. And also as a consultant, I spend a lot of my time building out table of definitions to say, yes, these are all of the acronyms we're going to use, but we need to explain them because someone has to be able to pick it up out off the not off the street, but
Yeah.
without having to go through a full a process to sort of teach them all of the words. They just need to. You need to be quite clear around what it is that
Exactly.
you're saying. Yeah.
That is so
Yeah.
true, Tim. I mean, when you look at it, we're talking usability, really, aren't we? Well, to me, look, all we're doing is we're talking a good communication method, because websites, all your digital content is communication. I mean, Caitlin, the work that you do in social media marketing and all the work you do with websites, that is communication at its best, isn't it? Because you're getting the message to people.
Yeah. I think it's quite interesting, like what you're talking about with like SEO, and then like also making sure that like when people are going to your website, like you've got to have that information accessible for everyone as soon as they get there. Otherwise, they're not going to stay there on your website, and you're losing customers, but you're also just not making it accessible for everyone.
Yeah.
So you're excluding people.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, and really what we're talking about, a usable website. And see, when you think about it, what is usability? It's a person at a particular time in a particular context using the tools can get the information, they can use it, they can meet their goals efficiently and satisfactorily. And that's all it is that we want for communication, isn't it? Because if people are getting the message easily and quickly and they understand it, they're more likely to use your services. So digital communication should be easy and efficient to use, so that people, and it comes back to neuroscience a bit too, which is, which part of the brain do you want them to be using to get the message? Do you want them to have to work out what the word means in dictionaries and think about the letters and joining the letters together because the fonts are not right, or them to read the word, understand the word and move on, be able to understand the sentence? It's efficiency and use of brain and mental tiredness and the mental gymnastics that the brain goes through. It's fascinating stuff. Understandable and effective, and being effective and understandable means, again, it's easy to understand, easy to get the message to them. Tolerant of errors. This is one of my big ones. I've been a coder for 35 years, and one of the things, obviously, we test and test and test, and we need to test, but one of the rules is you never test your own work as a coder, because I will test one way. Caitlin, you'll hop on and you'll test another way. Andrew, you'll test another way again. And then Lisa, you'll do something completely different again. It's such an interesting area there, that being tolerant of errors means coding and ensuring that you are very definite in the way you want a date entered or the information you want in a particular field. Able to be controlled by the user. You can turn the video off. For me, a video is useless, but if the transcript's there, fantastic. I'll go and read the transcript. But for someone with a hearing impairment, then they may use the video as long as the captions are there and the captions are accurate and meet the punctuation and grammar and all of those rules, because bad punctuation, bad grammar, your meaning's gone again. And minimizing your barriers and obstacles. And that's what we're all about. It's minimizing it. So again, the information is fed to them in the way they want it. Predictable, that's a really big one. Predictable means if you're going to use the date format in your website in 4 places, it's the same date format everywhere. If you're putting in a button to say submit, it's the same shape button everywhere, because then someone with dyslexia will recognize it. If you're using a green tick to say yes, you have alternate text with a green tick for the green tick that says yes. So someone like myself that uses a screen reader will say, oh, I know exactly what it is. Someone that has a visual processing problem but can see big images will see the green tick, say Andrew, like yourself, they will know, yes, that's good. Someone that has dyslexia, someone that has a cognitive impairment, acquired brain injury, it still gives the same meaning. Predictability is so important. And accessible. Well, that's what we're talking about, isn't it? And then user experience is the process. that we use, sorry, my screen reader's going off my ears. And it's how we ensure that everything related to the product considers all areas and all people that will be using the product so that everyone gets the information that they need. So for instance, if you go and look at a BPay is probably the bane of my life because they tend to put it as a graphic. So that's great for people that are visually fine, but when I go to pay a bill, I can't do that. So a lot of the time I ring them and say, read the numbers to me. And they say, oh, and I say, well, if you want me to pay the bill, I have to do this. It comes down to user design, that the product meets the needs of everyone. And it's just a good thing, whether it's a website, whether it's your Word documents, your PDF. PDFs should always be tagged. No matter what, they should always be tagged. Whether it's your email signature, how many people put the business card in the email signature? That means a lot of people can't contact you. It's the little things and thinking about the client and not making assumptions. So who's using it? How they will use it. How many of you are on a phone tonight or on a tablet? I'm on my computer tonight, but if I attend some meetings, I do it on my phone. People might use a kiosk, and a kiosk is another area. You know, you go to Chermside or any of these big shopping centres, Shannon, it's like Chermside's a big one here. I'm not sure down in Melbourne. And you have the kiosk that says how you find, where to find the shops. Well, they're no good to me because they're not accessible. So it comes down to that it is a good way to do it. And my husband loves the kiosks. He never finds the shops, but he looks at it and he has to work out for each kiosk, because kiosks are different depending on who builds them. When they'll use it. Are they using it at night? Are they using it in a bright light? Are they using it in a dark corner? Is it their sound and they're using it in a noisy environment? Why are they using it? What is the reason? What's the functionality that they need at that time? What is the information they're looking for? So, accessibility. Being able to access it and reach to it obtained easily. That's all accessibility is. And understanding the communication needs. As I said before, we don't know who is actually going to be looking at the website. Like Tim, one of the things I was really interested, you were talking about how those with a hearing impairment use your website. I've got friends that are actually deaf-blind. So there's another group there, or they could be autistic and deaf, or you know what I mean? There's Shannon, you'd see it as well. Caitlin, when you're doing all your work, you don't know. I mean, I found out not long ago, one of the directors of the one of the big government departments here he's Asperger's, and he put in a text, all I want is bullet points. If it's too much wording, I'm gone. You know, it's everyone has a different communication style, and one of my things is a lot of people never seem to say, how do you want the information given? You know, do you want me to send you an email? Do you want a text? Do you want it by voice in a recorded message? There are so many ways. Or do you want it just by paper? Because there's so many people that don't have smartphones. QML's a classic. I found out yesterday, QML, you've got to use a smartphone to book in now when you go to give blood. Well, someone that doesn't have a smartphone, like my mother, can't do it.
These are big barriers of forcing everybody to go digital, and it's not the choice. We promote choice and control through NDIS, and yet choice and control is being taken away on a daily basis.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's an interesting thing, like working with Hearing Australia and understanding that the demographic you can't just take away using contact center as an example. And I was just having a look at their website, and it's really, I used the term chunky when I was talking to someone recently. The text is really big, it's really concise, and as you're kind of talking about, I'm kind of understanding, it is like I can see, they've employed some of or just making sure that it's a really accessible thing. But it's also, as you look at, for example, self-service and that sort of thing, you cannot take away the channels. You can't go fully digital or fully self-service, because that's not going to meet everyone where they need to be met.
That's it.
I think it's one of the most important things.
Yeah. Tim, have a look at the menu. Is the menu operable by mouse only?
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I don't think there are even drop downs here. It's just buttons.
Yeah, and that's a good one, because menus, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But yeah, there's all these tools and things that can be done. There's so many websites where you've got to use a mouse to operate the menu. So I can't use those websites. And search engine optimization. Yeah, search engine optimization are digital accessibility techniques. It's just fascinating stuff. Yeah, websites should be easy, simple to use, readable, understandable, to communicate, and so everyone can get the information that they want. This is
Narelle, Andrew here.
Yes,
I hadn't
Andrew.
thought about the accessibility via a keypad as well as the
Yeah.
mouse. Are these Australian standards, or is
Yeah,
it world
no, they're a
standards,
global
or
standard. They're a global
standards?
standard. We're going to go into the standards themselves in a minute, but
Cool.
it is a global standard. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Okay. Now, where does it affect disability? Tim Berners-Lee is the guy that invented the World Wide Web. And one of his goals was everyone should be able to access the information. That was one of his goals. And what a goal. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened, because, people have gone and developed, and look, a lot of it is education. The education hasn't been there to say this exists. It just doesn't happen. Yeah, it's now Tim Berners-Lee and a few other people, after he'd finished doing the internet and everything else, that wonderful work, they created a company called W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium. And it is actually a not-for-profit organization, and it is not just those people that work there. It is contributed to by universities across the world, government, the big tech, or any tech. Your Facebook is involved, LinkedIn, you're talking about Oracle, Microsoft. I can't think of everything. All the big companies are involved, universities, people like myself, because we can all be part of this organization on a volunteer basis. And the organization's aim is to create the standards for websites and digital content. And that's where the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines come from. So what they did is they started off with the HTML, and you've all heard of HTML5, HTML3. This is where it all came from. They are continually upgrading the HTML to make it meet the requirements and the functionality that today's technology tools require. What they also did, I can't remember what year, they set up a web accessibility initiative, and it was a group that was over on the side, and their whole aim was to come up with a series of guidelines that anyone, regardless of their communication styles, can use to implement to create great documents, PDF, whatever, websites, emails, so that everyone can get the information, understand the information, and work with it. And it's a global standard. Okay. And basically, it's trying to remove anything that limits a person's access to the information. What are the barriers they looked at? They looked at colour. They looked at naming conventions. They looked at typeface. They looked at reading order. They looked at noisy rooms. They looked at people with use hearing aids. My husband uses hearing aids because he listens to Beatles too much, is my thoughts, but I listen to AC/DC, my hearing's perfect. However, it is still a barrier there. So they looked at every element that is used to create a document, a PDF, an Excel, a website, email, anything that is produced on a computer. They looked at every element. If you did the old desktop apps, that's even covered or getting covered. They're actually looking at virtual reality now. They're really going into what do they need to do for virtual reality to ensure that everyone can access it. It's a living document. It's a living set of standards, exactly the same way as the HTML, a living set of standards. Bad structure is one of the biggest problems. So it's like anything, garbage in, garbage out. And it's like, my analogy is, if I went and built a house and I didn't have the hinges on the doors correct, if I didn't have the angles correct, if I didn't make sure, that everything was squared off nicely, big cyclone comes through, it's going to go down. It's not a useful house. Exactly the same analogy. Bad structure prohibits and creates communication barriers. Bad formatting. Styling is a huge issue. Videos without captions, transcriptions. The use of even down to things like audio description comes into it. So it's just a huge area, and it's just a bit on audio. Hang on, where are we up to? Okay, I'll do just a quick one. Have any of you heard of a lady called Lauren Henley? Lauren Henley.
Yes.
I thought you would have, Lisa, because you're going to there is the Blind Citizen of Australia Award actually coming up on Saturday night, and she's actually one of the nominees.
Yeah.
In Australia right now, for audio description, most TV shows are not audio described. Netflix, to a certain extent, is. ABC does a tiny bit. However, about 7 years ago, Lauren Henley went to the Human Rights Commission and said, oi, it should be, I think it's 20% of all TV shows on free-to-air are meant to have audio description. Audio description is basically when there's a break in the sound, they will tell you something. So it could be a bloke's walking through a door. So they will say a man is walking through the door into the house. So it gives a description of what people with sight can see. So like the captions are readily available now. They're on YouTube. They're all over the place, but the audio description isn't. Anyway, she didn't get much help from the ABC or the free-to-air through Human Rights Commission. So she went to the United Nations and she won. And the United Nations gave Australia, so September last year, September 2022, the United Nations told Australia that ABC have to have at least 20% of their content audio described, and they had 6 months to set up a plan and get it moving. And so now, like Bluey is now audio described. I'm not sure how many shows of Bluey are audio described, but they are. They're actually bringing in audio description to TV shows. So if you use, and I'm not sure which TV types, they're a smart TV, obviously, you can turn on the audio description. I can sit there. They don't do it for the NRL Grand Finals. They are not doing it for the cricket. Those things are live, but they are doing it for the taped stuff, and they're starting to do it. That's what audio description is. And that's one of the standards.
Is that something that's, and I know and I pirated a movie off off a website.
Yep.
Once, so I can't even remember what the movie was. Cool Runnings or something. We decided we wanted to watch, and they had it forced. And I'd never seen it before. And I think at the time, it was kind of like how Siri on an iPhone 4 or whenever they brought it in would speak to you. Is it the same? I'm assuming it's all AI and not.
No, it's actually people that they do.
It is people, right?
Yeah, there is the Carols by Candlelight. There's a dress rehearsal, and it's going to be audio described. I go to a number of shows at the Queensland Theatre Company. Again, they are audio described. So I have a set of headphones. My husband sits there and watches it normally. I sit with the headphones. I know exactly what's happening on the stage. I have someone telling me what's happening on the stage. So I get all the audio comes through the headphones. And there are actually, go on.
So I was just going to say, I left the UK getting on 8 years ago, and it was quite big, the audio description. So I was a bit surprised when I come over here and it wasn't as readily available. So I've known about that for a long time. It's been gradually dripping into UK television. You know, we were promoting it to the blind community over in the UK. So, you know, at some parts, Australia's really ahead, and then in other areas, a little bit behind. But it just looks like now having this, you know, everybody on the same page across the world, which is how it should be. We're obviously making indents, which is amazing.
Yeah, and there's even now Auslan people. So the shows I go to, they have Auslan signers there as well. So Auslan, Caitlin, I'm not sure if you're aware of Auslan. It's the Australian Sign Language. There's 127 different sign languages in the world. Australia has theirs, which is called Auslan. And they basically stand there and they sign. So I've gone to concerts and they have Auslan signers there. It is fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome.
I think we have it at like most press conferences and all of that kind of thing as well.
Yeah. How are you going, Shannon? Is this helping?
Yes, it is.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Yes, Caitlin.
I just had a quick question regarding, so with the like describing video.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned it was called audio description. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
So like on social media, something we always try to do, like whenever we have like videos and any content that has talking on video content, like we have the transcription of like what people are saying. But would that also mean that it, in order to be accessible, have like some sort of audio description of what's happening in the video? So for
Not necessarily, no. As long as you have a transcription, the grammar's right, your punctuation's right, your spelling's right, your commas are in the right spot, so the same meaning comes across.
Yeah.
Yeah. Someone like myself, we grab the transcription and listen to that.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah.
What about for videos that don't have like, if there's no one talking in the video, it's more of just like a visual video?
Then you would, if it's a visual, look, either if it's informative, then it should have some form of description, transcription. If it's not informative, it's just there to make it decorative. Just say it's a decorative video.
Oh, cool.
Because decorative videos, it's got to be informative. You know, it's got to have a purpose. Like there's a lot of visuals here. My mouse, my arrows are not picking them up because I've said they're all decorative. They're there for you guys, but for me, they don't mean anything much anyway anymore. So I skip them. They're not needed for me. But what I wanted to do is just talk you through a few assistive technology tools. Some of you, all of you will know some of them. Okay. Glasses, mobile phones, guide dogs, long canes. They're all assistive technology tools. Long cane is the cane I use when my guide dog's not working. It's a long cane with a big white ball on the end, basically, for me. So they're used to assist in communication. Magnifiers. Yeah, hearing aids. Hearing aids are a great one. Screen readers, and that's what I use. There's three main screen readers that are very common today. There's the Windows 4. There's the Mac has a voiceover, Windows has a narrator. There's a commercial one called the Job Access with Speech, JAWS for short. It's a very expensive one. I just bought the license again, $1,730 for that. And then the other one I use all the time is non-visual desktop access, NVDA. It's an open source one. So most companies don't like you using it on theirs because it is open source. However, it's built here in Brisbane. And if you'd seen Australian Story about 6 weeks ago, the two guys, Mick Curran and Jamie Tay, they are the guys that did the work and created it. It's used in 27 countries around the world, and it's a great tool. So it does the work for me. Speech to text, dragon speaking, that's one. But speech to text, you would like, how many people use them, like, type, just read, say something for their messaging. Speech to text, braille keyboards, braille sensors, they're an actual technology tool. So there's actually keyboards that you can connect to your computers, Caitlin and Shannon, that converts everything to braille for you. Puff and sip tools, they are for people that have very limited mobility. And there's a number of different types of tools where people might use their eyes to focus, and they blink once, blink twice. You can set it all up on the computers. Puff and sip could be a suck to get something to move to a next line. It could be a blow. It just different methods of working with computers, even down to a stick, just using a stick with your mouth, depending on your amount of mobility. Some people just have a mouse, a little ball that they can work because they might have one hand only. There's a whole stack of different tools for different people. Screen magnifiers, well, there's the Windows magnifier, but there are all types of screen magnifiers. There's Zoom Fusion Text as well. Even down to how many people on their mobile phones zoom things out. That has actually come from assistive technology tools. A lot of tools that people use, Siri's another one, originally was created for those with disability. There was a bloke called Pagrini over in Italy, created one of the original typewriters for a friend that was blind in the late 1700s, I think it was. And that's where the keyboard and everything came from. And, obviously there was other people in other areas who were making printing presses at the same time, but he created a form of typewriter. Display
I think that's
setting.
interesting as well, how these features come into the sort of voice commands is now an integral part of, like, I ask Siri to turn my lights off when I go to bed. I think double tap or tapping your fingers together twice was an Apple Watch,
that's one of
an
the
accessibility
signals.
function, which was one of the big selling points of the new Apple Watch.
Well, do you know that double tap twice is one of the on my phone? That's one of the voiceover techniques I use on my iPhone to access it. That is it's all accessibility tools. If you go and have a look at your accessibility menu on your iPhone, and I can never remember what it's called on the Android, but there is one on the Android as well. Have a look and see what's available. You'd be stunned. You can make icons bigger. You can do all types of things. Change your background colors, invert colors. People with color blindness,
everything.
Blue, green, color blindness, red, green, the blue, yellows, the red, green, color blindness, inverted scale. It can all be done on all. So Macs and Windows come with it. iPhones, Androids, your smartphones. Obviously, Unix, Linux, those don't tend to come with the accessibility features. They just don't have them.
You can actually, I'm looking at the menu now I've got a 15 Pro Max.
Yeah.
You can, there's hearing devices, hearing control, sensor, sound recognition, it's very in depth.
Oh yeah. That sound
which I've not looked at before.
It's even down to because I have trouble finding the edges of doors if I'm in an unfamiliar place, and I can hold my phone up and say find the edges, and the phone will say exactly where the door is. So it'll tell me the boundaries of the door. One of the ones I really like is a baby crying. If you've got a baby and you're deaf, you can get your phone to pick up when your baby's crying, and it will, lights go off everywhere, and you know your baby's crying, go help your baby. Or the doorbell's ringing, or the microwave's gone off. It's just amazing stuff. Like for me, my microwave talks to me all the time because it's got a little computer and a little transistor, and it chats away and tells me what I'm pressing. And yeah, it's great fun. Yeah. So mobile phones, iPads, tablets, computers, Adobe. There is Adobe Acrobat, Microsoft Office, all come with accessibility checkers. Microsoft Office, Google Suite even has it. I haven't gone into, I've got to go and do an actual the whole training session for Google Suite. If you're using Microsoft Office, go into your review panel. There's a area there called Accessibility Checker. If you go from the left to the right, the first option is it checks your grammar, your spelling, your punctuation and everything. And I just work through in the review panel, my accessibility checker. I have it running all the time. So it will pick up if there's no alternate text for images or whatever the rule that is broken. It is a basic check. It cannot check for everything. It cannot. It will have a darn good try, but it can't. You still have to do some manual work. But it is there, and I encourage everyone, turn it on, leave it turned on your emails, on Microsoft Outlook, all over the place. Look for your accessibility checkers and leave them on. And again, all the tools are only as good as the design and the structure of the documents, the websites, whatever it is. If someone creates a document and doesn't think about accessibility, and then someone else that needs it, it's not going to get the message across. Don't forget, we're meant to be an equal opportunity community. You don't know who's making the decisions. It could be someone I know someone that's in management in Brisbane City Council. She's got no sight. So if she gets a document sent to her and they're asking her to make a decision on where she's to spend the money, and she's got one company where it's accessible and one company where it's not, what's she going to do? Okay, reasons why not, cost to incorporate. But you know what? The reasons why outweigh the reasons why not. But I put it in anyway. I'm being objective. I've got to do the right thing. Okay, now this is the good stuff. The Australian standard is AS-EN 301-549:2020. It is based on the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines version 2, level A. Well, that's what it's equivalent to. We currently, there's a new version of the guidelines came out 2 weeks ago. So the new version globally is 2.2. And there are 3 levels in it, A, AA, and AAA. It's obviously that computer nerds came up with the levels because that would be typical of them. I've worked in too long in computing. A is your most basic level. There is so many people that still can't access the information. We always recommend going to AA. AA covers off 90%. AAA goes into extended audio description, signing for taped events. It's a very expensive way to do it. Contrast has got to be 7:1. It's quite expensive deal to do. We always say, let's go for that middle one and get most people, and just, and just opening up the information to as many people as possible. Okay, it is backed by the Disability Discrimination Act 1992 here in Australia. However, you can never, ever be sued for not being digitally accessible. The rider on that is, boy, you can be sued for discrimination because they cannot access the same information as everyone else. And that's the kicker. The 2 landmark cases, Sydney Olympics, they were sued because a person with sight blindness could not buy tickets because the only way you could buy the tickets was on the net. He won. That's the landmark case in Australia. In the other one is the Coles Online. Do you remember when the Coles Online first came out? A lot of people in the disability world got really excited because it was going to make grocery shopping much easier for them, except a lot of them couldn't access it. So what happens here in Australia, if you find a website that you cannot access or information or whatever, the rule is you go to the company and you ask them, can you please make this accessible for me? If you ask them a couple of times and they still don't do it, you take them to the Human Rights Commission and you say they are being discriminatory. You never say it's digitally inaccessible. You say it's discriminatory because I cannot access the information. Human Rights Commission then get involved, there's lawyers involved. Normally it's mediation. The company's told to fix it, but there is a cost to the company in doing that because there's lawyers, there's all types of things involved. And I don't like that method of doing things. I just would love to see every business do it because I like the honey, I like the carrot rather than the stick. So the Human Rights Commission's the stick, but that's the legal standard here in Australia. And the other thing with it, and my analogies, I will admit, before I lost my sight, I had a lot of speeding tickets, quite a lot of speeding tickets, actually. I've got a lead foot and I love cars. And the way the digital accessibility works in Australia is, and it tends to be global as well. America's really starting to toughen up on it. New Zealand, yeah, they're pretty good as well now. However, in Australia, I liken it to someone changing the oil on their car. You don't need spark plugs anymore. Looking at your brakes and yeah, they'll be right. Looking at tyres and say, look, I'll get another 100 kilometres out of those tyres and writing your own roadworthy certificate. That's the equivalent with the digital accessibility standards here in Australia. All you have to do is say, yeah, I reckon I've met the standard, without testing with screen readers and braille sensors and everything else. You don't. And unfortunately, that is a big impediment to communication here in Australia. Okay, the standard. So that it's the WCAG. There are various levels of the WCAG are used all through the world. New Zealand's on 2.1. Obviously, the latest version is 2.2. No country's using 2.2 yet. America, I think, is 2.1. Japan, Europe, they all use versions of it. France, Italy, many other countries. Even some of the third world countries are working to implement it to different levels. It might be version 1, version 2, might be level A only. But again, it comes down to the politician. It comes down to the federal government. Here in Australia, federal government policy is that everyone should be meeting the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. However, when you push them on it, they say, yeah, but it's up to the individual departments as to whether they get it certified, whether they get tested for it and audited and make sure it's done. It is not actually followed through. And that's a big problem. Okay. The accessibility guidelines, as I said, they're developed by the World Wide Web Consortium, international community of member organizations, and the Accessibility Commission, and it defines how it works. So I've been talking about that all through, so we'll skip that. WCAG is 2.2, and it covers all access. Now, what is it? There are 4 principles. This is how simple it is. There's only 4 principles. There's perceivability, which is everyone should be able to see what you can see, what a person with vision can see, and everyone should be able to get the same information, maybe in different ways, but they should always be able to access the same information. Perceivability looks at all the elements that are used to build a website, whether it's text boxes, images, decorative, no matter what it is, they should be able to get the same information. It looks at timings. It looks at whether videos are started automatically. It looks at sign language. It looks at audio description. It, depending on the level, A, AA, or AAA, that's what perceivability is. That The same information can be picked up and read by a screen reader, by a mobile phone. Doesn't matter what tool you're using, captions, but that it is still accessible. The next one is operability. Operability talks about how a person is actually going to access it. Do they only use the keyboard? Do they only use the mouse? Do they use a puff and sip tool? Do they use Braille? What tools are checked to make sure that everyone can use it? Is a menu keyboard activated and mouse activated? Because it should be. Is it to get into a field that there is you can tab into it, or you can use a mouse to go into it? Is there placeholders? If there's placeholders, is there labels as well? Because people that have acquired brain injury or the OCD, if you've got a big form, they're liable to go through the form 3 or 4 times, because if it's a placeholder only, they'll forget what's in that placeholder. Short-term memory issues. The next one is understandable. Reading levels. We're looking at abbreviations. We're looking at English as a second language. We're looking at every area there that will ensure that the person gets the message you want them to get. If you use a PDF, if you've got PDF downloads, the PDF is accessible. Like you said, Caitlin, that the transcription's there, the captioning's there, for those that have hearing issues, or that like perceivability will look at color and contrast as well. Typeface, font, and all the rules. Where the text is too small, where the links have alternate text, naming standards on everything. It's so important that naming standards are accurate and concise. And the last one's robust. Robust talks about erroring as well, error identification. And up until 2.2, it used to be that there were no coding errors. That's gone, that parsing into different tools and screen readers and like if you go from, say, Mozilla to Edge to Chrome, different browsers, Safari, you should get the same information regardless of which browser you're using. It has to be the same information. Conformance is which is what I do, the area I tend to work in. I'm an auditor, I'm a trainer, which is what we're talking about tonight, and I'm a consultant. So I go in and conformance says testing the information. And I would look at a website and I go through all the standards. There's 13 guidelines. There are 4 principles, and there are a lot of success criteria. And I won't go through them all because there's a lot of them. And there's fail and negative and positive tests that we run to make sure that yes, it is accessible. And
Hey,
conformance. Yeah.
I had a question.
Yeah, sure.
Something like a question I've gotten a couple times the past few weeks is around alternative text and the approach to how much is too much text, like being able to give them advice for like decorative versus like non-decorative. But yeah, I know it's very subjective, so I was just wondering what
there is some rules. There is some rules. Alternate text should always be less than 100 characters. Always. And it should be concise and accurate. If you're looking at a girl running through a field, you wouldn't say the sun is shining, there are 7 trees, the girl's running through a field and she's wearing a pink dress. You would say a girl running through a field with trees in the background. So you're still giving the same picture, but you're being concise. And one of the reasons for the conciseness is, say for me, if I think I've got a B or something there, but if I was tabbing through and I hear all this text, the information you want, and then I hit an image, and if it's a long-winded description, well, I might have lost the context of everything else that had come beforehand. because I'm having to think, okay, now what are they actually telling me? There's a girl running through a field, and is it a field of trees? Is it oak trees? You know, where they go into too much description, you lose the context of what you're hearing. And we really don't want to lose that context. We want the person to say they understood the information they're getting. And even images have to be appropriate for the page. You know, you don't have a girl running through a field when you're sitting talking about assistive technology, because there's no relationship there. So conformance is talking about how we go about checking that you meet the standards. So we do audits, then there's a certification, and people can do it themselves. However, I can go on any website where someone's done it themselves, and I know they haven't tested the screen readers because it's obvious, or they haven't tested for Braille, or they haven't checked that the captioning's done correctly so that the meaning is still there for the person that's hearing.
Image 1.0, company logo.
Yes. Oh, yes, exactly. Or the classic is captioning, where you can see the people's mouths are working, but there's no caption. And because people, when you caption, you have to put everything they say. Captioning should never be more than 40 characters in length per line, ever. It should always be at the bottom of the screen, in the center, at the bottom. And again, I tend to try and, you know, YouTube, you can't really control the font. You can't. When you can control the font, make sure it's sans serif. It's easier to read. Think about the sizing when you can control the font. Minimum 12. But never more than 40 characters in a single sentence, in a single line on captioning. And you synchronize it. You make sure when the person's mouth is opening, the words match what they're saying. It's such an important thing because it takes away the context. It confuses the person that's got a hearing impairment. Why would they worry about doing it? There's no point. So
I think it's a very interesting. I have neither a hearing or a vision impairment, but I use like subtitles.
Yeah.
Only because the mastering is absolute trash on most television shows and YouTube things, and my soundbar struggles to actually deliver the information to me without me cranking up the volume. But I definitely feel that I struggle, especially on YouTube videos. I think Netflix and those guys, I pay them enough money. Everyone pays them enough money that they've got it down pat. But yeah, it's interesting that sort of having no more than 40 on the screen and making sure that it's lined up, because quite often you'll have things that are either lagged or a little bit further ahead than what the person's actually saying. So you kind of there's a little bit of catch up, or you're kind of knowing what the person's about to say before they've actually said it.
And isn't it off-putting?
Yes.
One of my nieces,
as someone who's like listening to the text going,
it's off-putting. I heard the classic the other day. A friend of mine, his sister, she's got perfect hearing, perfect sight, but she actually goes and finds all the audio described movies, and she watches them, listens to a movies while she does the housework. And I just said, "You've got to be kidding." And he said, "No, that's what his sister does." And then she tells him the good movies, because he's as blind as a bat. But he said that's how he finds out about the good movies, because his sister does the housework while she listens to the movies.
And it makes sense. I can't watch some people tell me there are these amazing television shows on Netflix like Dark, which are in German or something else.
Yep.
I can't watch something that's dubbed in English.
Yeah.
I find the lack of synchronization between the voice and the mouth movement off-putting. There's probably something in that somewhere.
There is. And there is English as a second language. If we go to, like, when I go to Italy next year, most of the family there don't have English. I've got to learn Italian. I know I know a few words, but not enough to, like, I couldn't sit and watch the TV.
Yeah,
Well, can I put
it's
I got
very
something
annoying.
This is Andrew. I got something to
Yes,
say at
Andrew.
this point.
Yes.
Most of what we've been talking, of course, has been audio described English.
Yes. Mm.
And of course, everybody else in the other languages have that as well.
Yeah.
But I'm also an Esperanto fan, so
Yeah.
I try to meet people halfway by learning a bit of Esperanto and
Yeah.
hoping that they do likewise, and I'll meet them halfway. So
Yeah.
that might be a bit of fun for your family if you suggest that
Oh.
you could both, you and they could learn a little bit of Esperanto to communicate.
Most of them are in their 80s, so we're not stressing them anymore, Andrew. The youngest one is 80, actually. The
Believe
ones
you
that
me,
can,
if
To be
they
fair,
know,
most people in
if they
Italy
know
don't learn any other language.
yeah,
But the fun part is that it is actually related to the Romance languages, so you would
yeah,
actually be able to pick up a fair bit of Italian if you had the Esperanto vinyl in your belt.
yeah. No, I'm lucky my father-in-law still speaks Italian, so I ring him and test words out on him.
Cool.
It's got to be. But this is again, you know, we go to another country, well, there's a communication barrier, isn't there? Or like you go to, we were in, what's the not Inverness, we're in Belfast, sorry. And my husband couldn't understand anything because the brogue was so thick. I understood everything.
I probably
but
couldn't understand anything, and I speak perfect English if I
yeah,
went to some parts of the world and you just go, I don't know what you're saying.
exactly. So it's
I struggle with Belfast as well.
oh, do you? Well, look, Lisa, you and I'll go next time because I had it down pat. But seriously,
It's vernacular as well. Like when you
Yeah.
start bringing, you know, it comes back to those principles that you put into a website as well. Don't over Australianize
Yep,
a website
that's it.
unless there's, you know, if it's
Reason for
something that should be, then yes. But it's that vernacular that removes that accessibility.
Yep, exactly. That's it. Yeah. And I think that's all I had. That's what I wanted to talk to you all about today. Is there anything that you'd like to know more about that we can? I think we've got 5 minutes. Oh God, we've gone over time. I'm so sorry.
Oh, I don't even know how long the session was.
Well, it was only
I'm just
meant
going
to
to say
be
I
for an
found that
hour.
super helpful.
Oh, good.
And, you know, I think as I work with companies like Hearing Australia, just kind of having that context around what you should be mindful of. I'm not the biggest UX kind of designer, but they're definitely people I kind of work with, and really, you know, making sure that as you know, when I work with people with disabilities or demographics, like customers of Hearing Australia as an example, really being cognizant around if I'm recommending that they do something or set up something, that it's mindful of you know, that accessibility piece. You know, we saw it as from a hearing point of view. How do you make sure that whatever call center recommendation you make is accessible to people who have hearing problems? Yeah, so
yeah, that's it.
I've found this really a great session.
You've got my email. I'll have a catch up with you whenever you want, Tim. What about
Yeah,
you,
absolutely.
Caitlin? Was that helpful?
Sorry, I was just trying to put my mic back on. No, that was incredibly helpful. Thank you so much. I really loved everything you were talking about, like with captions and like especially for like social media. Like I have been trying to be as accessible as possible for all of our clients online, but there's even like tips that have been picked up tonight, like from Shannon's question earlier around like how much you should be describing the photos, because I think that's something quite important. Like you're not wanting to, as you mentioned, like describe every single thing in the picture if it's not relevant. You just want to get that message across in a nice, concise way that is still giving your audience and communicating what they need to know.
And don't forget Facebook and LinkedIn now, you can upload an SRT file with your captions in it. You can caption the video yourselves, you can upload it.
Yes, they have been super helpful. We use Otter for some of our things. Like whenever we have a video, we can just
Yep.
chuck it in there and it transcribes it. And then it has that, to your point earlier about making sure the timings are right. You can adjust the timings. They're so easy. So it's like a lot easier to make sure that the words are matching up when you are putting the captions.
Yeah.
So yeah, really, really good. And it's nice to see that some of the social media platforms are getting a little bit more around making their things easier to be accessed for everyone, and also for people who are creating the content. Like they're making you have more options to be able to provide that.
Yeah, definitely. What about you, Andrew? How did you?
I found it particularly useful this last slide talking about the 4 principles, because I hadn't seen that before.
Yeah, there is. So in the chat, there is the WCAG mind map with the 4 principles and the 13 guidelines in it. So I put that in as a PDF for you. Hopefully you've all got it. It's in the chat. That was right at the start.
I've never learned that part of chat.
Okay, don't worry, I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you.
Sorry.
Don't worry about it. I'll do that. I'll put it. Yeah, I'm heading for Sydney first thing tomorrow morning, but I'll get that done.
Don't forget the time change since you're coming from Brisbane or so. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And
I'd appreciate that PDF as well.
I will make sure you get that, Caitlin. Shannon, not a problem. Lisa, Miss Lisa.
Yes, Miss Narelle. Thank you very much. Very informative. I'm lucky because I work with you and I can hand over a lot of this stuff to you, but it's good to be able to tell others while I talk about things.
So a really good website. I will tell you, Lisa's website there's a couple of issues at the moment we're fixing, but it is www.i, lowercase I, and then eye.com.au. It does meet the standards. There's another really good one, which is peak, peakpd.com.au. None of the government ones meet the standards. They might say they do, but they don't. I'll be blunt, they don't. Translink doesn't.
Can I tell you quickly one that should have been able to do it? A friend went to update her adult education qualifications.
Yep.
And she knew that the course was educating people that all courses have to be accessible, and they have to provide a reasonable adjustment.
Yep.
They didn't make reasonable adjustment to allow her to update her quals.
Yeah. And no TAFE.
It was the one that said you had to.
Yeah, and no TAFE is fully accessible. None of the TAFEs are. It's just a common problem. Most bills are not accessible. Brisbane City Council will email your rates bill out now. It is accessible, and Moreton Bay Regional Council, but most others aren't, unless you really force the issue.
I'm not surprised that PPD's Alan's website.
Yeah,
and yes,
yeah, because we actually did the work.
Yeah, I got the email invite because I've done a couple of things with Alan across the.
Oh, you're going to be there Saturday night?
No, I don't know what Saturday night is. No, I'm not. But I did a like a presenting course with him, and then I did a advanced neuroscience course with him also.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to, there's a great bloke called Alan Parker, and he's peakpd.com, and he's just brilliant.
Phenomenal.
Absolutely phenomenal. Go and listen to what he's got to say. He's a microbehavioral neuroscientist, linguist, and I'm really like this. So he's one of my friends. He's a good mate of mine. So, and he's just phenomenal in the way he delivers, and he's also part of the Digital Asset Solutions Group. He's part of us. So look,
that's why I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I did have a quick question because I've been messaging Beck on Facebook, and she's like, I completely forgot, and feels terrible. Will the recording be distributed after?
I will subtitle it and I will put it up on YouTube.
Perfect.
On our YouTube. And awesome. Our YouTube's actually got, so if you look for Digital Asset, I think it is, on YouTube, you'll find some of Alan's work up there and a few bits and pieces that we're putting up. We're building up a library there as well, if you want to see Alan Parker in action, because he did a great piece about digital accessibility and neuroscience, and He did another one about the potential of digital accessibility. And we start a podcast in a couple of weeks. If you all want to join us, it's called the Digital
Awesome.
Access Show. And yeah, so look, just if you look, any other information, please email us. You've got my email address. If you want to catch up, Andrew, I think you and I are in a big, thank you very much for rescheduling, Andrew. I did have to go in quite a hurry, so I appreciate you rescheduling.
Didn't realize there was the hour difference as well at the time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So thank you. And Caitlin, it's lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too. Thank you so much.
Look, if anyone else, if you'd like, definitely let me know. If anyone wants us to come into their business and talk more about it, ready, willing, and able.